Hello and welcome to this recording on deploying Azure Stack on an Azure virtual machine. So in this recording, I'll give a demonstration of how to deploy a virtual machine in Azure that is capable of hosting Azure Stack, and then how to install the Azure Stack development kit on it. Now, if you're not sure what the Azure Stack deployment or development kit is, I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So I'll also cover the important post-installation configuration tasks that we need to do after deploying the ASDK on our Azure virtual machine. And then I'll cover some fundamental information for you to begin to do some tests in your Azure Stack test environment. So during the course of this recording, you'll learn what works and what doesn't work so that you don't waste your valuable time trying to find out. So also accompanying this recording will be a blog post on my blog azurehangout.com that will cover the notes of the things that I'm sharing or the content that I'm sharing in this video. It will also cover more information beyond the content that I'm able to demonstrate in the video recording due to time limitations. So one of the things that I'm not yet sure, but depending on how long the recording goes, I may need to split the video into two recordings to avoid it for a single recording going for too long. So quick information. So Azure Stack's been around for a while now. Many people are willing to test it, to get familiar with it, to know how it functions, get more understanding of the solution itself as a whole. So one of the things is that it is something that it's hardware intensive. So to be able to afford the purchase of a hardware that you can use for testing could be really expensive. So this is just another way for you to work around that to be able to get some testing done and get familiar with the solution itself. So what I'll start by doing it, I'll show you the blog post that I'm referring to. So right now it's not yet published, it's in preview, but once I publish this video, I will publish the blog post that covers the notes of the things that I'll be talking about and sharing today. And again, more information. And then I'll post the link to the blog post in the description of the video below. So make sure you check that out. So hopefully you do have an Azure environment that you can use for this, but let's cover some of the prerequisites that you need to get going before you can do this. So number one prerequisite that you need to take care of is that you need to ensure that you have sufficient CPU quota for your Azure environment. So this is important because again, the virtual machine that will be deploying the Azure Stack development kit, which I must emphasize, it's for testing, it's not for production. So do not use the Azure Stack development kit in production. This is purely for you to test and be familiar with Azure Stack itself. So you have to ensure that you have sufficient CPU quota. The machine that we'll be using today, as you can see from this diagram over here, it's the standard E16SV3, which has 16 vCPUs. Now, by default, you're limited to, I think, around 10 CPUs per region for per region in your Azure subscription. So you may need to raise a support request with Microsoft to extend your CPU quota, specifically for the ESV3 and the DSV3 VM series. So I'm going to be using the ESV3 for this demonstration, but you can also use the DSV3 as long as it meets the requirement. So just be aware of that. So where can I check that? If I go to my Azure portal over here, and if I go under my subscriptions, I can select my subscription and then go under usage plus quotas. And what I need to do is I need to filter down to the region that I want to deploy this into. So in my case, I want to deploy it into East US region. The provider that I'm mainly concerned about is Microsoft.compute, so I'll remove the others. So leaving Microsoft.compute. By default, it's only going to show you items that your resources that you're currently using, so you can change that to show all. So it's going to show you all. And for the service quota, the ones that I'm specifically interested in, the ESV3 and DSV3. So here's standard DSV3 and ESV3. And as you can see here, I have 50 in my quota, so that's 50 vCPUs of each. So if yours says 10, you won't be able to deploy the template that I'll be using. It's gonna say you don't have sufficient quota, so you may need to raise a call with Microsoft. So just be aware of that. So the other thing that you need to do is you need to create a new Azure AD user account that has global admin privileges. So we will be deploying. So this is a demonstration video. It's not an Azure Stack lesson, right? Or Azure Stack deep dive. But in Azure Stack, you have two deployment models of connected mode or disconnected mode. One of the advantages of the connected mode is that you can link it up with your Microsoft Azure subscription, and then you can be able to download images straight from the Azure Marketplace that have been marked as being suitable for Azure Stack. So it's one of the things that um, you need to have an account to be able to do this link. So in my own case, that's what I'll be doing. So if I go under my Azure Active Directory and on the users, what I'll do is I'll click on new user and I'll call this user DO Azure Stack. And for the username, it's going to be a combination of my, I'll just put I can put any username, but I need to specify what my Azure AD domain name is. I need to specify that in there. So that's why I need that information about my Azure AD domain name. So if I go back on the overview to get that domain name, so that's my current domain name there. If you're using a custom one, of course you can use that. So I go on the users, new user again, do Azure Stack, and for username I will enter do Azure Stack at my domain name that I copied. So that, and the only thing that I really need to modify here is I need to modify my directory role. So currently it's just a user. I need to change that to global administrator and then go ahead and click OK. So once I do that, it's going to give a temporary password, which I can go ahead and if I click show password and I go ahead and copy that, and I'll make a note of that somewhere. So, and then if I go ahead and click create. So create, I have my account created, but remember that I only have a temporary password. So when I begin to run the script to install Azure Stack, I'm not going to be able to use the temporary password. So I want to change that to a much more stable password. So for me to do that, what I'll do is I'll bring up, I'll need an incognito window. So what I'll do is I'll start Internet Explorer in private mode, and I'll go to https portal.office.com. So the username will be the username that I set earlier. So if I go back to my Azure portal here, so that'll be the username of this user here. So I need that username. So, or if I don't have that listed down somewhere, let's close all of this. Let's go back to Azure Active Directory. Let's get my domain name, and that'll be do Azure Stack at, no, okay. So now if I go back to portal.office.com and put in my username and go ahead and click next, it's going to ask me to enter a password, in which case I'll put in the temporary password that was created when I created the user. So if I click on sign in, it's going to prompt me to set the password. So I'll put in the temporary password and a new password. And I'll go ahead and click sign into that. So at least what that has done now is it's changed my password to a static one. So I'll go ahead and close that because that's all I really needed was to change that password to something static. So that being done, the next thing that I need to do is it's just an advice to say you will be using different password in the course of um, being able to deploy this so you can begin to test Azure Stack. My suggestion or advice is to get a single complex password and use that for the passwords that you need. And that will, avoid the confusion of which password is which. Again, that's not recommended for production. This is because we are in a testing environment that I'm giving this recommendation. It's just something just to take away some extra complication. You don't need to do that, just some suggestion from me. Okay, so that being done, the next thing that we really need to do is we need to move to this place where I need to deploy Azure Stack Hyper-V host as a virtual machine in Azure. For me to do that, there's this template that was created by somebody awesome and that's available on Git. So there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. Somebody else already created an Azure Ham template that simplifies this process. And whoever you had that created this template, thank you very much. The, the person that created this template. It simplifies things a lot. Okay, so I have the link in this blog post, so I click on that, and then I have the option to just straight on just click on here to deploy to Azure. So if I click on that, because I'm already logged into my Azure environment within the same browser, it's going to pick up my session, and then it's going to log me in, and then I'm now at the custom deployment window in Azure. So what I need to do, oh, just to give you a quick review of what we're doing. So what we want to do is we're going to deploy a very powerful virtual machine in Azure that's going to be running Hyper-V, as you can see on here. So this virtual machine is what I'm trying to deploy now. It's going to be called AZS Host 1. You can give it whatever name you want to. And then it's going to be running Hyper-V on it. And then we're going to set up the Azure Stack development kit, and then it's going to set up all these different platform roles for us in form of virtual machines and all the necessary requirement for software-defined networking and all that stuff. So that's what I want to do. So I want to deploy this host using that template. So if I go ahead and click create a new resource group, and I'll call this DO Azure Stack-RG. Just so you know, I won't advise you to just use Azure Stack as the name of the resource group, because when you're doing the link between Azure Stack and your Azure account, it's going to create a resource group called Azure Stack. So to avoid a conflict in that case is what I'm saying. So I'm calling that DO for my initials, Azure Stack-RG. The location, because I only have 50 vCPUs for ESV3 in each US, so I'll go ahead and select each US. I'll leave the virtual machine. For the virtual machine size, you can see you only have certain allowed values. So I'll select the lowest and the cheapest, which is the E16S V3. I'll leave everything else as the default. I'll set a password. I'll leave the subnet name. I'll leave again everything else as the default. For the public DNS name, I'll set something like DOJustAck08. Something that's unique is what you need to set there. Leave everything else as the default. Agree to the terms and conditions and go ahead and click on purchase. It's going to validate the template and the parameters that I've imputed, and hopefully validation passes and I can move on. So validation successful. So then it's going to actually begin to deploy this VM host that we're going to be installing Azure Stack on. So that'll take a few moments. Actually, in the blog post I do had, so that'll take approximately 12 minutes to complete. And once that's complete, then we'll go on to the next step of logging into Azure Stack host, and then we'll begin the process of the deployment. So I'll pause the recording now, and then I'll be back once this is completed successfully. So see you in a few moments. Yeah, so welcome back. So that took roughly around 17 minutes to complete this time. So just be aware that it depends on how busy the Azure region that you're using is at the time of deployment. So the time could vary. Because the first time I did this, that took about 12 minutes, but now this took about 17 minutes. So I'll adjust my timing on this and say maybe approximately 20 minutes. Okay. So now that our virtual machine is deployed, so this is the virtual machine that we'll be setting up Azure Stack on. So one of the things is that for using the templates that was created by this wonderful person, is that it abstracts a lot of the complexities away from us, because otherwise we'll need to go to the Microsoft website, download the Azure Stack development kit, and do a bunch of other things with that. So majority of that has already been taken care of by the template. So we'll have add to add additional disks. So we don't need to add additional disks because that's taken care of again by the template. So it's just simplified things for us. So all we need to do now that the deployment of our virtual machine is done is let's log into the machine that we're going to be using as our Azure Stack host. Let's connect to it using remote desktop. And let's go ahead and start deploying Azure Stack on it. So if I go to my Azure portal, I have my host here, AZS host 1. I click on that and I can get the public IP address here. So I copy the public IP address and I bring up remote desktop connection and I put that in there. If I click on connect, it's going to ask for username, in which case, if I change that and I specify the username is administrator. So that's the name in the template. So it's administrator. And the password is the password that you specified in the template. So I put in my password and I go ahead and click OK to that. So don't ask me for this computer. And then it's going to go ahead and connect me in to this host. So just hold on for a while. And we're connected to this machine now. So again, username is administrator, password is whatever you set in the template when you did the deployment. So after fully logging into this machine, what I'll do is I'll open PowerShell as administrator. This is very important that you run it as an administrator. And we will be running these two commands in PowerShell. So what I'll do is I'll copy the first one, which just changes the location of the shell to C / Azure Stack on Azure VM. So if I go ahead and bring that up, so it's one of the things that you see is that all those things that we'll have had to do manually, like downloading the Azure Stack development kit and extracting it, that's been done for us. So it makes things much more simple and straightforward. So what I'll do is I'll right click on the start button. I can click on command prompt admin and then change to PowerShell. I can click here and search for PowerShell. And then right click PowerShell and then run as administrator. So I'll just make this larger to make it easy for you to see. So let's change the font to 20. 20 will do. Yeah, 20 is good enough. Yep. So first of all, I've set the location to C Azure Stack on Azure VM and I'll run that. And that's done now. So the next thing that I'll do is I'll run this command to install Azure Stack Development Kit on this machine. So it's that simple and straightforward. I tell you, if not for this template, the whole process that we'll have had to go through, it's a really long process. And there's a lot of changes that we'll have had to make in PowerShell script and a bunch of other things, which this guy already did to just make things very straightforward for us. So I'll run that to run the PowerShell script to install Azure Stack Development Kit. So that should start executing. Oh, not sure what it's. Oh, okay, yeah, here we go. So I'll cancel that because again, that didn't respond very well. So let me clear the screen and I'll put in the command again. And I'll run that. It says enter the password for the user administrator. So the user that I logged in has is a local administrator, which is the same password I put into the template. So I put in the password and I press enter. Re-enter the password to confirm. I put in the password again and I press enter. Then it says, make sure says you're gonna need a user who is global admin on Azure Active Directory. So it says I want you to put in the username, which is the username at your Azure AD tenant.onmicrosoft.com. Or if you're using a custom domain name, you can put that in there also. So the account that we created in the prerequisite stage, the account that we give global admin privileges, I'll go ahead and copy that username and I'll paste that in there. So let's copy and I'll paste that and I'll press enter. So it says to enter the password for the account. So I'll put in the password here and we enter the password. And then it gives me 5 options. It says 5 options for the Azure Stack Development Kit that you can deploy. Latest is 1807, which is just this month because we're still in August 2018 and this is 1805. So this script still says unless instructed, select only latest tested ASDK version 1712. So it still says that, but what I can say is that I have tested both 1805 and 1807 and both of them worked fine for me. So I think that should be okay. So I'll go ahead and select enter 1 for the latest version, which is 1807, and press enter to that. It's going to give you this warning here. Again, you can ignore this because I've tested this and it worked for me, so it should be okay. Press C to continue or Control C to cancel. So I'll type in C and press enter, and it's going to begin the process. So it's going to be downloading a lot of payload from Microsoft, and it's going to be from this URL also. It's going to be downloading a lot of payload from this URL that it's going to use to deploy Azure Stack Development Kit on this machine. So just so you are aware of this, I've put in here approximately 6 hours because it is going to take 6 hours. So at this point, what you do is you leave everything, you go off somewhere, and then come back in 6 hours, and hopefully it's done by then. In case you're like me, like when I did this the first time, I followed it closely. After about 1 hour into the whole process that it's currently doing, the machine is going to shut down and it's going to restart. So don't be panicked by that. So it's part of the process, because one of the things that's going to be happening is as part of the process, all these virtual machine or platform roles as Hyper-V virtual machines will be deployed. And one of them is a domain controller. It's just going to set up a domain controller, create a new forest and a new domain, and then it's going to join the host to this domain that it just created, and it's going to restart. So when that happens, once the machine shuts down and comes back up, if you still want to follow and see what's going on, do not log back in as administrator. Well, if you do, nothing will go wrong, only that you won't see anything on the screen. But don't let that cause you any panic. Once it shuts down and starts back up after it's joined to the domain, the account to use to log in is Azure Stack, which is the domain, / Azure Stack admin. And it's the same password that you entered for the local administrator that you used to log into this. So just be aware of that. So in this case, wait for 6 hours, and then after 6 hours, you have Azure Stack installed on the machine. Then we can go ahead and do some post-installation configuration. That being said, I already have another Azure Stack environment where this has just completed on. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So if I go ahead and log into this machine, you can see I'm logged in. I'm logging in as Azure Stack / Azure Stack admin, and I'll put in my password there. And you can see, so it's gone through a lot of process and it's done a lot of deployment, and at the end, it's completed successfully. So that's good. So this is what you get at the end of everything. So at the end of everything, you get this, and everything is successful. So you notice that the machine, if I click on the start button, there's an Hyper-V manager on this machine. If I open Hyper-V Manager, you notice the Hyper-V was installed on this machine as part of the process, and here are all the machines for the Azure Stack platform roles. So here are all the machines for that. So you can see that they are all running and they are all good. So that's essentially what we'll get at the end of this is this. So that being said, I can move on to the next step, which is post-installation configuration on the other one now. So for post-installation configuration, we'll need to open a different link. So what we want to do is there are two sets of instructions that I'll be following. The first instruction is this first link over here. So what this instruction will take us through is how to install the necessary Azure Stack PowerShell modules. And then there are some things called a collection of tools called Azure Stack tools. So you can search for that on Google. If you search for Azure Stack tools, they are hosted on GitHub, and you find this on GitHub. So it's a collection of scripts and tools that Azure Stack Development Kit uses. So what this instruction that I put on there, what it's going to guide us through is how to install the necessary PowerShell modules, Azure Stack tools, and then we need to activate the tenant admin and the user portals or the tenant portals to be able to use them. And then we need to extend the password reset to 180 days. So these are all the things that is going to take us through. So let's start with the first section here. And that is the link that we're following. So if I go to that link, it says install Azure Stack PowerShell. So what I need to do is, let me magnify this, is install Azure Stack PowerShell. Under this, I'll copy the commands to set PS Gallery as a trusted installation repo. So go back to my machine, bring up PowerShell and run it as an administrator. So right click, run as administrator. I'll change the font to be larger. So let's make that 20. And I'll go ahead and paste that command there and press enter. So all that will do is it's going to set the PS Gallery repo as trusted. So if I do get PS repository, I'll notice that this is trusted. So before it should be untrusted. So that being done, let's move on to the next one, which is with an internet connection from ASDK host, run the following PowerShell script. So it's going to use this to install the necessary modules for Azure Stack in PowerShell. So I can copy the entire thing and I'll go ahead and run that on my machine. So if I go back and let's go to copy again and let's go back and I'll paste that. And just so you know, because I try to put the times there for how long it's going to take. So if I go back to the blog, that's going to take approximately 35 minutes. So to complete the whole steps for everything on this page. So one of the things that you also need to know is that in this one for install Azure Stack PowerShell, you only need to follow this one and you only need to run this PowerShell script and this script, not this one. So this one is for if you do not have an internet connection from the ASDK host computer is when you run this one. But we can ignore this one because we're already running this as we have internet connection. So that's why we can ignore this and we can ignore this one also. So once this finishes, we can move on to downloading the Azure Stack tool. So I'll just go back and let's run the final command to install the module. There we go. So let me see if I put down how long that this would take. not specifically this one. Okay, yeah. So just everything as a whole. So there's a lot of modules that it's going to install. Um, so this may take a while oh, actually, I think it's finished. I think so. I can close this, by the way. So I think that's finished now. Okay. So the next thing that we'll do, still following this instruction, is we're going to download and install the Azure Stack 2. So this one will take a while to finish. It's going to be downloading a lot of payload from GitHub. So it will take a while to finish. So I'll copy that, go back to my VM, and I'll run this. And at this point, I'll pause the recording till this finishes because it's going to take a while to finish. It'll probably take a couple of minutes to finish. So I'll see you again once this has completed. So welcome back. So that didn't take long at all. That took less than 5 minutes, I think, to complete. So which is good. So now we've downloaded the Azure Stack tools on the machine. Now we just need to validate the Azure Stack development kit installation on our machine. And to do that, there are two things that we need to do. First is we need to open Powershell and run it as an administrator. So what I'll do is I'll close this existing Powershell session and open a new one and run as administrator. Okay, so we're going to run this command. What this is trying to do is it's going to connect to this platform role, one of the virtual machines installed, and then from there we can test our Azure Stack environment. So if I go ahead and run that, and press enter, and then the PowerShell prompt should change to connect to that machine. So that's PowerShell remoting to that machine. So let's see that that's good. So I think my PowerShell is just a bit delaying, just delays a bit. So while that is going on, I'll copy the second command, which is to test Azure Stack. So let's go back. Oh, and then you can see, so it's connected to that machine via PowerShell remoting. I run test Azure Stack, and then it's going to begin the test. So it's going to test all the requirements are there. It's going to test that all the platform roles are running properly. It's going to do a bunch of validations. And once all of that is done, really we have a working test environment for Azure Stack that we can begin to use. We only need to do two more things, which is to register portals. So we have two portals in Azure Stack, or two main portals. We have the admin portal, and then we have the tenant portal. So both of them will register them after this is completed. So this one will take, a fair amount of time. I think it took roughly about 15 minutes when I did this the first time. So hold on for like about 15 minutes. I'll pause the recording. Once it's finished, I'll go ahead and activate the administrator and tenant portals, and then I'll reset the password expiration policy, and then I'll bring a wrap to this recording. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Hello and welcome back. So as you can see now, the test Azure Stack command completed successfully. We can ignore this warning because we're running in a test environment where we have only one node, and the performance won't be the same if you're running a 4-node cluster. So that's all right. But the main thing is all the tests were successfully passed and all validations were good. So that's the main thing. So now that that's completed, we can move on to the next part, which is going back to this document, we need to activate the administrator and the tenant portals. So there are two portals, one for the administrator for setting up Azure Stack itself, and the other one for the tenant for people that will be consuming subscriptions and resources that are created on Azure Stack. So All we need to do is we need to copy that link there, and then we need to open Internet Explorer or any browser that we have running here, and we need to paste that in there. It's going to ask us to sign in. So to sign in, we'll need to put in the Azure AD user account that we gave global admin privileges to that we created earlier. So that's the account that we need to use. So in this case, I'll go ahead and get my account here and I'll paste that in there. So that's the DO Azure Stack. I'll just verify that quickly because I switched account a bit. So let's go quickly to verify that I do have the user named as DO Azure Stack here. So if I go here, I've got on the users and I have my DO Azure Stack. So that's good. So I'll head back to the VM and I'll go ahead and click next. It's going to ask me for the password. I put in the password there. And you can see that it's going to ask for certain permission. So if I don't do this and activate the portals, only the admin can log into that, which is not what we want in this environment. So for us to be able to do all the tests that we want to do, I want to activate both of them. So I'll go ahead and accept and give the necessary permissions for that. And logged into the Azure admin portal here. So I'll do the same for the tenant portal, which I'll go to that URI, that URL. I'll open up a different tab and I'll paste that in there and I'll press enter. And I'll go ahead and select that same account. It's going to ask for this permissions. I'll go ahead and click accept. And we are logged into this. So here's the admin portal again. Here's the tenant portal. So that looks good to me. So to wrap up this video, I'll do this step, which is to reset the password expiration policy to 180 days. So the main reason for this is to ensure, to make sure that the password for the development kit host doesn't expire before our evaluation period ends. That's why we're running this. So I'll just copy this Powershell command. We don't need to do both. We just need to do one of either. So I can either do Powershell or I can do it manually. So I prefer to use Powershell, so I'll copy that command. Not this one, the other one. Bring up Powershell. If you're using the same window, you need to exit from the Powershell remote session here. So don't forget to do that. So exit, put on the command, press enter, and that's done. So, and here we go. We've got Azure Stack running on a virtual machine in Azure. And now we can begin to do a bit of test. What I'll do is I'll stop this recording now because we've gone way over the time that I usually like to go in a video. But what I'll do in the next recording, which I'll split this, is I'll just walk you through how to do the next part of this, which is how to download an image from the Azure Marketplace into Azure Stack, and then how to deploy a test VM so you can see. So thanks very much for watching this recording, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.